everyone, welcome to the Hitchhiker's Way podcast. I am Aishwarya, and today we are joined with the founder of sendlane. His name is Jimmy Kim, and sendlane is a unified email marketing tool as well as SMS marketing tool for Shopify owners as well as creators. So, hey Jimmy, it's really great to have you in the podcast.
Yeah. Hey,
Thanks for
Ash. Thanks
taking
for
the time
having
to
me
do
on
this.
here today. Yeah. Very excited to be here and always excited to talk about things that I can help share into the world. So, yeah, excited for the next hour here together.
That's amazing. So let's start out with humble beginning. What was your childhood like? I know you're an Asian, and I heard that you're a first generation immigrant, and it can be really strict at that point. So it is said that people are shaped because of their childhood. It can be traumatic as well as it can be really good. What was your
Absolutely.
case, and how did it shape your life?
Yeah, definitely am a first generation immigrant. My parents brought me over when I was a year old. So they had immigrated from South Korea here to the United States. And my aunt was already here in the United States. So that's the reason they made that decision to make it out here. And I actually grew up with a really rough upbringing because we were poor and we didn't have very much money. And I lived in special housing out here that was designed for people who didn't have the money to pay for it, called Section 8 housing. I grew up in the ghetto. And so I actually was a really bad kid. My funny story, or not so funny back then, but funny today, is that I was expelled out of public elementary school for getting into too many fights. So this is second grade. I got expelled. They asked me to leave the school and never come back. And the reason why was because I always stood up for myself. And even as a child, when people would pick on me for being an immigrant and couldn't speak the language and do, I fought back, and well, that fighting back unfortunately led to my demise there. And I ended up going to a private school in third grade. And for the next 5 years, I was pushed into schedule and format and getting myself into routine. And you know what? As I look back at it, it was a really good experience, positive thing for me. And it kind of shaped me back up. And, as I went into life, into my childhood, we eventually started making enough money to move out, get into a nicer place. And I went to a public high school and things went all right there. So, that went well. And then we went to college, right? And so my childhood there in college, I went to school. I started off going because I wanted to be a doctor because that's what I was told to be. Realized really quickly I hate
Asian
science.
parents.
Yeah. Then I said, hey, I want to go do some computer stuff. But then I realized how much money was being made there. And then I eventually ended up that I wanted to go be a lawyer. And I thought that would be cool because, again, I wasn't thinking about it in a bigger way. Now, ultimately, the story goes, it's really interesting. But my story is that I never finished school. I never finished college. I went for 2 years. And then on my third year, I never came back. And what happened was I used to wash cars on my off cycles, summers, different times. And it was always a thing because I'm really into cars and I wanted to be close to them. And I came back one summer and the manager at the time, he told me that there weren't any positions available this summer. And I was bummed out because this is where I wanted to work. And leaving, the general manager pulled me aside and was like, hey, like, you've been out in the sun. Why don't you come on inside and sell some cars? You obviously know the product. Give yourself a shot. And one thing led to another, and I never went back. I made a ton of money really early in my life. And then I progressed up the ranks because I always wanted to move up. So by 21, I was running finance, 23 finance director, and I was a general manager of a Saturn dealership. So, like, that's kind of how my life projected. I always say this was my first like crazy life. I've always worked. I was very entrepreneurial as a child. So I was always looking for ways to get things that I wanted by selling or doing things. So I had the lawn mowing service in the summer, in the springs and falls, summer. I had the lemonade stand. I had the car washing stand. I did all of it. Anything we could do, myself and my childhood friends, we were all hustlers. And all we wanted to do is find ways to make money so we can find and buy that next video game. And we knew our parents couldn't do it for us. So we had to go figure it ourselves out. And so, I always laughed that I worked hard always, but I always had the nicest things because I made my own money all my life since I was 14 years old, actually younger than that probably. And, I was always hustling to figure it out. My first car I bought for myself and my next car and so forth. And yeah.
So mostly money was your driver, or was it something else that you
Nah,
liked
it was
about
definitely money
doing?
driven. It was 100%
It
money
wa-
driven. I look back, no doubt. I could tell you some lie, but really, it was money.
yeah, even though it's money for a bit, you kept on doing it for a while, right? It was a very long period. I think you started it at 12 or something. You were washing dishes before. I heard a story of that
Yeah.
for $3 an hour, I guess.
Yep, yeah.
So
I did
that's
I did a little bit of everything. I was dishwasher. I worked at a pizza shop. I was a cook. I was a lifeguard. I did anything that made sense, that was convenient and available to me. And everything that I did might have been walking distance because I couldn't drive. So then when I could drive, I could go out further and get a better job. But I did whatever it was. And yeah, you're right. It wasn't money. It was freedom that was given by having the money, right? Being able to afford the things I wanted and, being able to do that. So it was always a driver at the early days. Now, as I've gotten older, obviously it's changed a lot and evolved, but that was the driver early on because that's really all it is. It's semi-materialistic, semi whatever. We're young kids at that point, right? That's all we know.
So, how did that turn into a journey where Sendlane began? And
Yeah. So
I heard that you worked with another entrepreneur who was doing courses online, PPC, I guess. It was back in 2000s, I presume.
yeah, no, absolutely.
So,
So yeah, that's exactly right. Onyx Singal is who you're talking about. Yeah.
yeah, Annex Single. So, from there, how did you go to here? What was your journey to founding Sendlane?
Yeah, a little fun story. I'll kind of share it. But so in 2008, when the recession occurred here in the US and the car industry exploded, I was friends with this guy named Onik. We didn't know, he knew I sold cars and I knew he did something on the internet, but we didn't care. We were friends, right? We were there being friends. And I remember one day I was really just tired, beat up, stressed out. Things weren't going as well. Obviously, the recession had really put an effect on us. And I looked at him and I said, man, what do you do, man? Start telling me what you do. And he started telling me all the things. I said, and what are your challenges that you have in your business? And he told me a bunch of stuff. And I said, Anik, I can help you with those challenges that you have in the operational and scale side that you have because I've managed 80 plus people at this time. If you can teach me this whole online thing, that's kind of how it all started. So I went to join his company. I took a big salary decrease to go join him. And I really just went to go learn and take it in and teach and work and operate. And, over the next couple of years, I just learned everything fundamentally about it. And over that time, I actually learned and fell in love with email pretty early in my life. And I got really deep into it, from deliverability to, data management to all this stuff that I started to really understand pretty early on. And that led me to my first own company. And the first company was not this company. It was an affiliate marketing company first, because what I learned from Onik and what we're teaching other people, I started to apply and I started making money. So it was really working. And then eventually, just like everyone else, I became a little bit more of the educator as I learned that I could teach people in a different way, really focused on email, where Onik was really focused on PPC. And so I started focusing on email and teaching people how to generate money doing affiliate marketing through email, lead generation, squeeze pages, landing pages, all that fun stuff. And during that time, that business started to evolve into this creator content, into a software company. All around that same time, I had good amount of money. A friend of mine, again, came to me and said, hey, I need to borrow 50 grand. I have a PO, which is a purchase order from this large retailer, and they want $50,000 of product from me that I just created. I don't have $50,000 to fill this, but I know that you might have it. So I said, sure, why not? Here you go. I gave him 50 grand. And I remember just a couple months later, I walked into the store and I was like, hey, man, cool store, man. I've never actually been in here, but really cool. Things look like they're working and working well. I said, what are we doing here? What are you doing? And he kind of talked and I said, well, what about your online? And he was like, well, we don't do online. And this is like 2013. And I was like, all right, we need to talk. And I said, look, let me take that money and make it an investment into an ownership and let me go run the online channel. So for the next 4 years, we scaled that thing and we were growing it online. We became a full retail store to a full direct to consumer. We became a cut and sew men's shop, and everything we were selling on our site was all owned and manufactured by us. It was pretty incredible. This was a 2013 to 2017 that had happened. During all that time, I recognized a big problem. The problem was the tools that I needed as an email marketer did not exist at that time. Right now, my main competitor is a company called Klaviyo, but they didn't exist back then even. They weren't even out there. So it was MailChimp and Bronto back there. And I wanted Bronto, but I could only afford MailChimp prices. So I remember we're sitting around the table one day, and it was myself, it was Anik and another partner. And we all looked at each other and said, email drives so much revenue for us. Why do we let someone else control our own destiny? And why are we having issues with this when we're smarter than them? Well, we thought we were smarter than them. And so we put some money together. It was 10 grand each that we had to put in every month. That was our bill that we would have paid the provider anyway. So we paid 10 grand to our little pot, and we basically started developing. And pretty quickly we got the system going, the things going, money started generating, revenue started generating, and one thing after another. It really got us back into the place, and we used that tool to generate over $150 million of revenue between the three of us over the next 4 years or so. And that all led to 2017. In 2017, my content creator company had become a software company, and I had a chance to get acquired and exit out of a lot of my tools there. So I took the chance and jumped out of it because I was kind of frankly bored of it. In the clothing company, we were doing really well, but we were having a lot of creative differences. As we scaled past the $10 million mark, I wanted to keep pushing the gas, and my partner wanted to slow down because he didn't want to become uncool. And later on, we figured out Supreme went off and did crazy stuff, so it didn't really matter. But we always had this creative difference. And so I looked around at that time and I said, you know what? I need to go do my next thing. And I looked at Sendlane and said, we did something here. We made money here, but I want to go figure out how to solve for a bigger problem. The problem that I saw when I was a merchant was that A, the tool, not being hyper focused, but B, the amount of tools that you used as a business was incredible. The tech stack was now just becoming more and more relevant, and people really cared about it. And I kind of the anti-tech stack guy. I think that tech stacks are stupid. I think that we overspend in software often, and I think that we overthink that you need best in class tool when you're using moderately, maybe a quarter of the percentage of the tool that you have in front of you, even though you're paying for this incredible tool. Nobody buys a tool and uses 100% of the tool. They use the things that they want within the tool often, and usually just because it's best in class doesn't actually create that. So I went off to go create this unified future, and I said, hey, I'm going to go eliminate these tools. I'm going to consolidate people, and I'm going to bring it all together. And so since 2017, now 8 years later now almost, I've been building this unified future, building these tool sets. I had my head down for many years building the tool, no revenue or minimal revenue for a couple years there, really figuring it out. And in 2021, I remember I came out with a new tool, and it was really hard, didn't really gain traction. And then in 2022, we started to figure out our go-to-market strategies somewhat. In 2023, it really snowballed, and it's been a really big success as we continue to launch more and more product. And as we enter this year, we're probably entering I would say our special unicorn year, if it's just going to be the year. Like, this is the year that we either make it or break it as we're coming into it. And it's a very exciting time.
It's amazing. It was a really good story to hear from the beginning. So you built the product for yourself, but you decided that, oh, people are facing the same problem as mine. So you put the product out for other people to use it. Did you charge it from the beginning, or what was the business model at that point?
Yeah, we were really cheap and we were charging for it, but we were, right? We were the extremely cheap competitive alternative, and we were charging from out of the gate. So I never did a free thing most of the time. We've always been really good about making people pay for things. So we charged and continue to push along with that. So we never actually went through the free model. Just it never made sense as a bootstrap founder. For me, making money is the epitome of starting a business.
Is that what most startups do? Like, what do you think about startups which is mostly B2C going with freemium model at the beginning?
Look, freemium model is a user acquisition channel. It's a way to get acquired users, get feedback, and learn about the users. I think there's a use case for every market. And if you're thinking about B2C especially, like, yeah, I get it. Like, you need to get mass consumerism in there. But the reality is like, it's very different between B2B and B2C, where B2B, where you don't need many customers. There's plenty of great businesses with 100 customers that make a lot of money, right? In B2D, you need millions of customers to be considered successful in that market. Such a different marker. And users, unfortunately, because of social media platforms, have really become the lever that people are looking for. So the freemium model becomes following that to get people adoption, usage. And if you have a good product and a sticky product, hopefully they'll come back. And
But there's this thing that the founder of Superhuman, I presume you know the founder, Rahul Vora. So he told this thing where most of the startups that he saw, B2C startups, they launch in product hunt and they get a lot of customers, users at the beginning, and they use the product and they use the product. A lot of people use the product and the whole thing breaks. And when you as a founder don't fix the problem, it will create churn. People will not come back to your product. Do you think that that is what most startups do at this point? Is it fine to have a freemium model now?
look, I think there's a bigger thought process to this. And let me explain this to you because it's really interesting. If you've ever read, there's a book called Crossing the Chasm. If you've never read it, you should check it out. It's a great book about startups. And essentially what it talks about is the different stages of a startup and the type of customers that you need to bring in. The problem is actually not the focus of going to product hunt or whatever. people rush to go out and get their customers and any customer at any cost to bring him in really early because people want to make money in sales. But the thing that you don't learn as an early founder, and this is where I think like even as a third time founder, I still run into this problem, is that we get really excited about the idea of customers and money. And we sometimes lose sight of who and what this person was built for, right? And so like if I went back in time and I talked to myself, I would have said, hey, I know you have this product and I know all these other people are willing to give you money, but only take the customers that actually are fitting the model in which you're building for, because those people will be successful on your product because of that. Now, does that hurt you in money? Absolutely. But I can tell you, as someone who's been doing this for so long, that if I would have gone back and I would have done that, my business would be very different today because the user feedback would have been better. The continued vision would have been better. The actual customer base would have been different. And the last thing, the churn, right? You don't lose churn when you have a product that's built for a certain person. It's ideal for them. But when you're like an e-commerce company and you've got someone doing mobile applications and they want to use your product, of course they're going to churn in 6 to 9 months because the product doesn't do what they need for their business or their need at that time. Same thing happens for B2C too. At the same time, it's like build the product for the consumer. Now, and the idea of superhuman being that it's an email client and being that it's a very focused thing, like I get it. Everyone uses email. They're looking to save time, money, right? And that generalization, sure, I agree. But I don't agree when it comes to often the generalization of a lot of tools. They're built for something, and the best tools are verticalized in the market. And if you're verticalized in the market, you need to be speaking to that vertical and not chasing a dollar. It's the same way I feel about Product Hunt or AppSumo or any of these guys. I'm not here to hate, shade, throw anybody, but I would never, because I know that's not the right audience for me. I don't care about the money. I'd rather go eat more ramen than to go out and have the wrong customers into my audience database. True. I'd rather wait just 3 more months and get the right people into the market. It will make a difference.
That's amazing. Speaking about customers, I heard that one of the things that really differentiates your startup is the quick customer. So you have a very small team and your customer service was really fast. How do you do it? How do you
Yeah.
effectively manage customer service with a very small team?
There's a couple things, and I'll kind of give you some of the secret sauce we have. So secret sauce number one is we run the top down model. And what I mean that is we take the newest tickets first, effectively making people feel like we're moving faster by always taking the newest tickets first. And I get it. This guy's been sitting for 40 minutes, but the reality is 45 minutes isn't going to change his outcome or feeling. But guess what is going to change? The 1 minute guy, right? So we changed this flip down model. That's number one. Number two, the way we staff, we don't staff this role like a 9 to 5 role. Too many SaaS companies think about this role as a 9 to 5 role. We roll it like a retail model. You work from 6 a.m. to 12 p.m., 12 p.m. to 8 p.m., 8 p.m. to 3 a.m., right? And so when you staff in a model that allows you to scale and allows you to have that, you don't need to have 2, 3, 4, 5 people during a certain time. Your product should be good enough. Your help doc should be good enough. You shouldn't need more than 1 or 2 people. And even today, we do run very lean. We're about an 80 some person company today, but we run lightning support still to this day. And then three, it's cultural. At the end of the day, it's cultural and starts with me, right? I run with high efficiency, high emergency, and with a strong focus on customer centric. There is no, we'll get back to you tomorrow. We need to solve this today. And that's how it's been from the day people come into this company. And culturally, that starts with the founder. You got to love, you cannot be a non-customer centric company and turn into a customer centric company overnight. It just doesn't happen because your founder and your culture is already built, and your team that you're bringing in, the people you hire, have to fall into that mantra. And oftentimes they don't fall into that because they weren't hearing it from you. To ask them to suddenly be customer centric, it doesn't work like that, right? So we focus here in this company, and every person that comes in, top to bottom, has to be customer centric and understand that. And when they don't, they're no longer here anymore because that's not the model we follow.
That's amazing. So I really love the customer centric idea of yours. And speaking about emails, you have an email marketing tool as well as SMS marketing tool. Gmail has this algorithm where it finds spam quickly, right? So a lot of people, especially a lot of founders who are sending a lot of cold emails in bulk, are mostly automated through a software. But when you automate it, Google kind of figures it out, right? It figures that it's spam. How do you avoid it in your company? How do you mask it?
Yeah. So, cold email has definitely been a lot of learning curve and skill. Let me kind of explain and break it down. There's a lot of ways of going through the camp of it, but I'll kind of keep it at the most simple level here because of the pod here and make sure it's helping those early stage. So Number one, it starts with the data. And what I mean by the data is I hate when people come to me, founders come to me, and they're like, look, I'm doing this cold email. I found 1 million people. I said, nope, go too big. They said, I found it 10,000. Nope, still too big. Honestly, you should be at like a couple hundred, maybe 1,000. Drill down, find your right people, and then research and data layering. It's not one data layering. It's not to go to built with and download the tool and download the information and blast it. It's go to built with. For me, I go to store leads, I go to seamless, I go to what's that called? Seamless, I go to whatever other. We use like charm.io. We use like 4 or 5 data tools, and we're layering data on data, and then we even use a human element on the end of that. And the human element validates all that data through, and then our email starts. So what did I do? I've eliminated bad emails. I've eliminated people who are no longer there. I've eliminated all the bad data that I have. And then I started. Now, from there, it's a slow process. People always want to go 0 to 100. They want to go buy SendGrid tools or different things. And the reality is that it's actually a really slow process to get that trust to build up and proof and so forth. Because cold email can have great engagement rates if the message is good and the data is good. Those are the two things that matter, right? And then it's about volume and speed. So it's like, hey, today I'm going to send 40, 50 emails out. And next day I'm going to send 40, 50 emails out. The next day I'm going to send 50, 60 emails out. The next day I'm going to send. It's a slow scale of incrementality before you get to the scale that you can hit the cold email. And even then, it's still extremely tool. Now, the question of personalization versus automation is always the challenge that everyone has. Look, it all depends on your business model. If I'm chasing after $100 million companies, every email better be personalized to the T. But if I'm chasing after $1,000, $1 million companies, I'm going to get more automated because it becomes a volume of scale. Less companies, less options, less things. So I've seen it happen both ways. I've seen companies that'll send millions of emails out a month, and they're just really built on that lower end branch, and they just need to turn and burn, and they're just looking for fast reply rates. And I've seen what they call, and I'm sure you know in the marketing world, they call this ABM, but that's when you're just hyper personalizing experience, moving up and down the chain, getting multiple buy-ins throughout the board. It all depends on your maturity. For me, I understand that, and that becomes a element of how do you do that, and then that kind of carves out into your third thing, which is like if you're gonna do cold email, you've got to have more dedication to the manual than to the automation. If people try to automate everything, I know the dream is to build scalable things, but in personalization and cold email, it's not that scalable that you can just turn around and do it. And there's all these tools about like, intent tools and yada, yada, yada. But people forget you can't have intent if you can't buy traffic that comes to your website. Your website sitting on the internet is not going to get intent. You need to drive website traffic to that. And that becomes a second layer of cold email, right? Second layer of cold email is knowing your audience and making sure that you know who's coming in and seeing that those intents are connecting and the sales are happening behind it. And that means that you understand your data. And that's the third thing that people don't really nail down really well when they're doing cold emails, understanding what that data really means. Are they opening and then not clicking? Are they opening and not responding? That means that your hook's not good. That means your message isn't good. It means your copy is poor. These are all things that people don't think about. But cold email has a lot of nuances. And, a lot of people follow this cold email playbook because they follow this old Salesforce B2B playbook. But effectively, I would say one thing I will say, Ash, is that the playbook is dying right now. And it's not working for a lot of people. And people are burning a lot of money in this market doing it. And, if anyone goes back and looks at Sendlane's history or looks at some of the things that I do in the market, we've effectively dumped the old playbook. We don't have BDRs. We don't do cold email. We do 100 targeted ABMs, and our goal is to win 100% of those people and those 100 companies. And every email is handwritten, and we have no automation tools that run any of it because that's how important it is in order to win these.
That's amazing. You did really explain how actually Gmail algorithm works, and you it's basically you have to avoid unwanted emails, and you have to drill the data down. You have to drill it
They
down.
need a reply or
Right?
click. If you're not getting high response
Yes,
rates, doesn't matter.
high
The rest of
response
it
rate.
doesn't matter. It's all about response rate now. You got to get high. And I'm talking, on a response rate or click rate, you've got to be north of 5 to 10% that you're bringing in. And that's a data point that you can look at. And I guarantee you most of the listeners here will have 1, 2% and think that they're doing all right. That's terrible for it. It should be a really high message because it's well connecting with the audience.
So, since we are talking about email, I know you get a lot of emails from founders as well as people like me. What is the best way someone has ever reached out to you? Like, what was the best cold email that you've ever gotten in your life?
Cold emails for me, I read all my emails, I read all my messages, and I read all my DMs. I'll tell you, it's all about personalization. And the more that I feel that the person's researched me, got to know me or the company, and understands where I am in the world, the better it feels. And I don't have any specifics, but I'll tell you the ones that I forward off are always ones that connect me, hook me, realize that I am a good fit for what they're doing and it makes sense for me. And I'll forward that off to my team or someone it is. But otherwise, most of them look like templates. Those ones, there must be a terrible playbook out there that's like meetings at 12 p.m. and different things like that that I see out there. Those will never get activity from me. But the ones that do get activity are the ones that I can tell. I can sense the fact that someone's put some time and energy behind it, and I'm okay with that because everyone's just doing their job.
So that's all right. What is that one investment in your life that you made early on that took you to the place right now?
I'll actually give you the weird one that no one wants to hear that's probably listening to this thing. In teen, I was running 3 companies. 2018 forward to this year, I was running one. What did I do? I got focused. And what that focus was obsession. And what that obsession was developed on was that I put on the blinders. As an entrepreneur, I get a lot of shiny objects chased at me. I think about a lot of dude, I've got 100 product ideas of 100 things I want to create at all times, right? But really just tuning out the noise and getting really focused was probably the biggest advice that I can give any founder right now, because too many founders are trying to do too many things, too many side hustles. I didn't take on side consulting gigs. I didn't go off and try to make other monies. I didn't go off and try to start other applications. I got focused. And it took me 8 strong years to do it. And I know that 8 years sounds like an incredible amount of time, but I'll tell you, it went like a blur. And it was the most powerful education that I've ever had in my life at the same time. And it was a really expensive education because, I made a lot of money and I was fortunate in 2017 to make a lot of money and exit. And I had made a lot of money over the years. So I had the living lifestyle that I already liked and everything else. And I really had to make sure that I could stretch everything. I didn't get paid in my own company for the first almost 4 years of its life. So I was making zero income each year. My tax was zero. I was getting taxed. You know what I mean? It's kind of interesting as, the things were happening. But ultimately, the biggest thing that I learned as I took back is I wouldn't have done what I am today if I didn't have extreme focus and an obsession over that focus. What happens as an entrepreneur, and often entrepreneurs, the reason why they win and the best ones in the world are the ones that are just truly obsessed over one thing, whatever that thing is. And it could be as crazy as a spreadsheet. Like, I hate spreadsheets and I'm going to go make them better, right? And their obsession just permeates from the person and creates really a big nuance around the person. It makes them live, breathe, and think in. And that's what successful entrepreneurs do. A lot of these guys, you want to go this startup and that startup and that startup. That's great. But unless you're Elon Musk and that's it, like literally, I don't see very many founders who are able to do the things that people are able to do like that and stop projecting after. The best founders are doing one thing and one thing only. And if you're an early stage startup listening to this thing, thinking about moonlighting at a company or doing this other startup because, you have a great idea and you're going to go start up too, stop. It's not going to work out, most likely. Now, I'm not saying it won't, but 98% chance. I would bet against that person and say you're going to fail at both of those startups because that's what happens often.
Jack of all trades, master of none. We
Even
all
that,
say.
it's a time thing. The only thing precious about a founder is our time. Everything else doesn't really matter. Money, yada yada, that does matter, but doesn't. You can only have so many times. We are limited by a 24-hour time window, minus your sleep, minus your eating, minus your thing. You got 8, 10 hours, maybe 12, 14. If you put 14 hours a day in versus 7 hours a day, and you literally feel effective. If I told you to go be a soccer player, for example, football player, for example, and you only put in half the effort, well, you're going to get half the result, unless you're just a natural, right? I get it. That's the edge case. But most people need all of it. And that's the example, right? I always tell people, if you're a pizza guy, right? You give a person who knows how to make no pizza and you make them make pizza for the next 5 years, they're going to be excellent at making pizza. But if you make them make pizza, sub, pasta, and salads, they are going to be mediocre at making all of those. So, kind of like that, but really it's at the application level that matters.
You have to go all in. That's right.
That's it. Go all in. And you can come back out for air later. I mean, I'm at that stage now. I'm out for air and finally in a really good place where I could hire the right people and put them into place. I'm in a scale mode, so it's less exciting than the growth mode for me, but it's an exciting place for the business and my outcome personally. So I stay very involved. But at the same time, now I've got the right people in the place, and now I can go dabble on the side and go play and go do things that I want to do. But that's why we're an entrepreneur, right? We always want to find that. And that's definitely something that I've been fortunate enough to experience over time.
Speaking about obsession and focus, there's this quote from Elon Musk's book written by Walter Isaacson.
Yep.
He says that a sense of urgency is the operating principle in our company. He actually puts really impossible deadlines on his employees. Do you do that to your employees?
So I think that every deadline a founder puts out is usually impossible because we're overly optimistic and we overly anxious and we think that everybody works at the same speed that you do. I think in the early days it's important. Like, do you know what an OKR is? Have you heard that term, objective key results? That's what larger companies do. Okay, so OKRs are a perfect example. Though you have these large attainable results, your actual objective to get to your OKR is usually about 60, 70%. That's a healthy score to your goal, right? And the reason why that is because that's what the framework is about. We've got to aim big and charge hard, but we also have to have the realization that we're never going to always hit it. But when you do hit it, it's an extreme event that occurs. So I would say that founders are always going to have this mentality that we always think that things should be done yesterday. That's just kind of how we are. The urgency is what helps a startup move fast and pivot just as fast. That's why that's how you chase big companies. You move twice as fast as the bigger company. You can grow twice as fast as the big company. You will catch them over time, right? It's like the tortoise and the hare thing, right? That's the big thing. Everyone becomes a tortoise eventually, and startups are the hare. And you're always got, you know what I mean? Like, it's the thing, right?
There
It's the opposite of it, right? Like, it's like you start off one and you slow down while the other one starts off slow and takes off, right? It's like a really unique experience. But yeah, I think that you've got to put goals into place. I think you got to push people. You got to make people out of the best out of they can. And if you're hiring a fantastic team, and that's really, really the key to a good startup is early on is the team that you hire. If you're hiring a great team, they should all want to run with you at the same speed. And if you have people who can't run with you, they're probably not right for the role, especially in an early stage startup.
What kind of people did you look for when you were starting the company? Like when you
all
wanted
the
to hire
all the
some
wrong
people?
people, all the wrong people. Put it that way.
What
Logos, big
mistakes?
experience, big dollars behind them, big heart eyes behind people. Here's the reality: people are built for different stages, and at the earliest stage, you need the scrappiest people who are up and coming, who need a shot, who have a chip on their shoulder. You need people that have personality and experience at the same time, but also want and understand. That's the key word I say. Understand what a startup really means to a person. The fact you're going to make 40 grand even though you're supposed to make 80 grand, the fact that you're going to work triple the hours even though, because you're here for the mission and the outcome, not for the money today. And those people are not that often found in this market. But when you can find them, that's important to stick together. That's why the greatest teams are assembled and funding rounds occur to just teams without even anything, is because when you can put a team together and you can show the team that you guys are the most smartest team in the market, you will probably win no matter what you're working on. You really will. And I look at it too today. So when I say early days, I hired all the wrong people. I spent money in the places I shouldn't have spent early. I hired the wrong people. I did hire some of the greatest people, the ones that are still here with me today over time, but some of them were the worst people that we could have hired because of that too. So again, this comes into it, and and I always tell people, don't hire friends and family. Terrible idea always, no matter what, because you're going to have to fire them one day.
I think the first few employees that you have in your company, they join you because of your vision as a founder, because you haven't had a product before, and it's really about you, not entirely the company. They don't want the
That's
salary; it's about the vision.
Yeah, and it's the same reason why an investor or a seed investor invests in you, not because you have this grand vision. They invest in you as a person because they believe that you, as a person, will figure it out, and they're willing to put some money behind you.
Yeah, that's right. It's exactly right. So, as a founder, do you have any mental framework for deciding important decisions in your company?
I wait 24 hours before making the final decision always on anything big. And what I mean by that is I come to the decision. Look, we're all founders. Gut intuition is strong. Listen to the gut, but wait 24 hours and really think about it and make sure that gut's right. And that's really my best framework that I tell people. There's a lot of frameworks, but the thing about being a founder is decision making. You're making 1,000 decisions a day. But when it's a big one, you need to step back, think about it, think about all the effects of it, and really wait before you make action. Because a lot of times you may have not thought of something, or so forth. And you have trusted advisors, you should have definitely used them to get a second opinion and a third opinion.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. Being a founder and building a company actually requires a lot of persistence, right? So I don't know if you've heard the story about Mark Zuckerberg. Mark Zuckerberg actually did jujitsu because he wanted to know when he wanted to give up, right? Because as a founder, you are always pushing through and you don't know when to give up actually. You are fighting everything and you're pushing back your limits and actually beyond your limits. That is the thing. But in jiu-jitsu, when someone locks you down, you should give up or you die actually. So you have to give up at the right time, right? Like, when do you think a founder should push through, and what is the extreme point after which the founder should give up and move on?
It's such a hard question to answer as an entrepreneur because I actually have a very different principle around that. I believe that most people give up days, months, weeks before they're about to make that move. And what I mean by that is people give up too early, in my opinion. And I think I take an opposite approach to this because, and I kind of go back to that early statement when I talk about obsession, but you can't kill someone that doesn't know how to be killed. That's the biggest thing that you got to think about when you're thinking about these things. And so for me, often I tell founders and early stage people that I'm mentoring and telling, I know it's tough, just keep pushing because you will figure it out. If you've gotten this far, you'll continue to make it far. If you can get one customer to pay you, then you can continue to get two and three and four, right? And that's really hard. And to Mark's point, I get it. Mark's a different animal. I look at Mark and say he's at a level of founder that's beyond all of us at any point, and there's nothing but respect to Zuck. And I think that a lot of that is true. I mean, he doesn't know how to lose, so he went to go figure out how to lose because he wanted to feel it. That's the way that he felt that he could find his barriers. For me, I don't think that that's the way I think about it. I operate as an internal optimist in this company. I will always push the boulder forward. I will always fall forward. I will always fall in the front and die first. But the reality is that I know it's my job, and that was my job in the earliest days to get it to the place where we can't die anymore. And that's really the most beautiful thing you can do into a business is eventually you make the business a living animal, like a living human thing, and it no longer can die anymore because it doesn't need to be dragged by you anymore and pulled up the hill.
Like, was there any point in your company where, in the early stage, like you were putting out a lot of products? Usually, people put out a lot of products and they're in early stage. If I put a product out, it's not working, and I have to pivot towards something else at that point. But I don't know if I should pivot or should I work on it. What is your advice on that? Go deeper on that.
If you think you're not sure, then you shouldn't pivot. When every time I've pivoted three times in the sendlane history. All three pivots were with gut intuition and firm belief. If there's ever doubt, don't do it. But pivoting is literally the thing that wins startups. The ability to pivot, the ability to merge, the ability to see, and ability to make action faster. So I think that pivoting is 100% something that people should be in companies. Look, I said it from the start. If you get a seed investment, they don't expect your business, whatever you told them in your seed investment, they don't expect that to be your business in the Series A. When you take your Series A, they don't expect that to be your B. At Series B and beyond, they expect that to be your business over and over again, right? It takes time for them to develop. It's our job as founders to find that pivot, to make those decisions. But to me, it starts with within. We all know when it's right and when it's wrong. It's there. And if you're listening to this pod and you're like, hey, I feel it, you're probably right. Don't question yourself. Move with it. It's an entrepreneur's gift that we all have. Young or old, we all have this gift of gut feeling, and you're usually right. And you should act on it.
That's amazing. So let's speak about the future of Sendlane. What do you think does the future look like for Sendlane, and what's the next ambition for you?
Yeah, the future of Sendlane is winning. That means that we won the market and we took the staple and put the flag up top. For me, we're shooting this pod about 2, 3 weeks ago. I announced it publicly, but I stepped down as CEO and I brought in a professional CEO, a guy that is way better than me. And it's allowing me to spread my wings and fly a bit and do the things that I love in this market and continue to do it. So, what is my next thing? Look, I'm always dabbling. Now that I'm got time, I can start dabbling and I can start sprinkling and start checking out other things that I want to do. There's no doubt that I'll have another product or a company in the next couple of years that starts to form up again. But I do it in a slow manner because I've got a great company in front of me and I'm all in on this company. But my side hobby is go build another company, right? So for me, I would say that I'm staying in the market. I'm staying complimentary always, but I would probably start finding other things because the inner builder in me has an itch. And at this stage, as we're scaling, that itch isn't scratched as much because the building is less than the scale is happening now. And it's not as exciting. In the early days, when you're building, every week is changing and we're still moving fast, but the change now is about process and scale. It's no longer about building and winning, right? It's a little bit change that happens in the business. And so I have to find that itch. So for me, that's kind of the thing. I want to see Sendlane win. I want to see it, the meaning of why I started Sendlane was not because I wanted to make money this time. And it was a great question you asked earlier. It was about legacy this time. It was about leaving a mark. It was about saying I can do that. It's about going off and saying I've never raised money in my life. And then I went off and raised $30+ million from venture capitalists that I've never met in my life sometimes because I've met on Zoom and stuff. And all of that was big accomplishments for me. But now I've done that. Now it's about legacy, leaving a mark. I want to be able to, and I will leave Sendlane one day. One day, I'm sure I will. We all do. But I would love to see the day I leave Sendlane 10 years from now when my kids are growing up and be like, yeah, my dad founded that company. Sure feels good, right? Like, hey, I did something to leave impact. And every person in that company 10 years from now, and companies sound like 10 years from now, when I'm not even here anymore, they'll still talk about the founder and what he was visioning and what he was out to do. Means they're just talking about you, right? And they realize that you've been able to do it and you're supplying for them. So as an entrepreneur, my biggest thing is taking people, lifting them up and moving them off into their career. You would effectively be doing an engine, a machine where you're hiring people, paying them, helping them move up in their career and move on, right? Even with you without there. And that's the biggest thing. When people leave my company, I don't care. I just hope they're doing better than they did when they came here. And what I mean by that is if they moved up into rent, dude, I celebrate the heck out of it. When someone tells me they got this big promotion, they're leaving, dude, I'm applauding because to me, that was winning. It's not about keeping someone. It's about empowering them, giving them the place, giving them the space, let them run, and then seeing what happens from there. And some people will leave, some people won't. And if you can empower people to stay, great. But it's my job to empower them to stay. It's also my job to empower them to grow, to one day leave and be better.
So you're still in Sendlane, right? You just stepped down as CEO, but you're still working
Yeah, I'm
inside
still
Sendlane.
founder and chief innovation officer is what my term is. My job is doing all the things that I want to do now and throwing off all the boring stuff because, I know everyone glorifies the idea of CEO, but at a scale stage of CEO, your job is not being in the market. Your job is dealing with fires, the board meeting, financials, budgets, payroll, HR, operations. It is all behind the scenes, not in front of it. It is no glorious thing about being CEO. What's glorious is being the founder and being able to hire a CEO so you don't have to do those things anymore. And who cares about the job title because you still founded this company and your strength is in the vision. And that's where the future is. And when people realize this one day, it's going to be a big unlock for a lot of companies. Too many companies out there in the market that are founder led that should have hired someone better than them.
I think, yeah, CEOs actually work in the ditches. They have to really go to the crappiest problem in their startup and solve it, right? So
100%.
that's all right. So where do you think, how do you think Sendlane would provide value in the AGI era? Have you ever thought about this? The post AGI, artificial general intelligence.
Oh, we've all been doing AI for years. It's called software. It's called, algorithms and software, machine learning and large data models. We've all been doing it. I think that the ease and accessibility this year, and really the biggest thing that I take back and what I think is going to be really cool is we're not going to see very good application over the next 2 years or so, roughly. It's going to be sparse. The best ones are verticalized. They're really solving for one or two problems. What I think AI is really going to help is the natural language that's allowing a person, a human like myself, who is not technological, but a very product focused founder. I can go be a product focused founder and code my own stuff now without actually hiring engineers to do it with no pay, no code, things like Bubble on the front end and Python and AI, for example. You could literally write an entire application without ever hiring an engineer. And over the next 2 years, I believe that that's going to be more available than ever. And that's going to change the way the world runs. Jimmy, who has no ability to write code, I couldn't write you one line of code. will be able to write myself an entire app. I'm actually practicing in the nighttime. I've got a bubble app with this other thing that I'm working on, and I've been putting it together, and I'm doing it all through natural language word. And that's like, hey, I understand prompt languaging, which is way easier to understand than a code base. You know what I mean? And so I use
Yeah,
that to write that, and it's been something cool. And it's how I learn and educate myself, because I believe in the next 2 years this will be relevant. But for 2 more years, we probably have a long way to go with this stuff still.
that's amazing. So I'm going to read out this quote from Terence McKenna. He's a really good writer. I just want you to, compare this quote with some events that happened in your life before, and how it's about courage and how you moved impossible obstacles in that situation. Like it was impossible before you. It was never intended to be yours, but you had so much courage, you did the thing, and it was yours aftermath. So I'll read the quote now. Nature loves courage. You make the commitment, and nature will respond to that commitment by removing impossible obstacles. Dream the impossible dream, and the world will not grind you under. It will lift you up. This is the trick. This is what all these teachers and philosophers who really counted, who really touched the alchemical gold, this is what they understood. This is a shamanic dance in the waterfall. This is how magic is done, by hurling yourself into the abyss and discovering it's a feather bed. Do you resonate with this quote?
Absolutely. I actually, this is another way of saying there's a thing called the law of attraction. Have you heard of that before? The law of
Yeah.
attraction says that if you can vision, you can dream it, you can want it and desire it, that you can create your own path. So on my phone, I have a thing that says make your own luck. And ultimately, that's exactly what it is. And I live by that model, even when I'm gambling or I'm doing anything, like I'm, building something or doing, to me, you are always in the ultimate control. How you set your mind and how you put things forward is how it works. And when I think about business, ultimately, it's literally how I operate as a person. Eternal optimism is what my team calls me. But really, the answer is that I don't know what it knows to fail. I only know what it knows to win and keep pushing forward. And even the moments of the darkest hours of the company, look, I've almost ran out of money 7 times in this company as we've been growing. Last minute fund. I'm talking about funding at 12 p.m. to meet payroll at 3 p.m. kind of deal, right? Like I've had those moments in this company because I had $0 in my account. And it was internal optimism and knowing that it's going to come through and being able to believe in it, that drives you along as a human. When you don't have that courage inside of you, you tend to fail and you tend to give up and you tend to back off. And what that quote is saying is that in order to win, you've got to go that extra mile to push further when you're uncomfortable. And that uncomfortableness is not something comfortable for many people, but if you can embrace it and you can push forward, you can win.
That's amazing. That was really good. Can you explain any worst situation in your company? You told it before that you got funding before you had to make payroll just aftermath the funding. Explain the situation, and how did you go all in and believe that it would work and did the work?
I mean, like just that's a fun one. I'll give you one example. Right, it was like December of 2018. I've been pushing the boulder up the hill, doing everything I had. I've taken hundreds of meetings with venture capitalists, trying to figure out how to get funded. Finally, found one that we wanted to go through, and there was a clock ticking. And the clock was my money run out date, the day that I no longer had money to pay for this thing. And I basically ensured by doing everything I could do, ensuring that every T was crossed, every dot was crossed, and staying completely optimistic and positive team, shielding the team from any failure points or feeling like anything's going to happen, and just staying positive about it. I don't have a perfect answer to that. I think that running out of cash in a startup is one of the things that occur quite often, and it's a really hard thing to deal with. But the reality is that you have to be in the right place. Now, if I was running out of cash and I wasn't in a funding round and this was all, that's a whole different problem that you might have. But I was prepared enough to get in there and do it, right? They always tell you got to be 6 months ahead. Wholeheartedly believe you should be a year ahead at this point. If you know your business, you know what you're doing, you got to be way ahead in order to know and get out there, because it takes a good 6 months to fundraise anytime, especially in this climate and environment. So I think that being prepared optimistic and ready. That's really the answer for every one of my funding rounds. I mean, there were some scary times that we got to the down to the needle, but the reality was it always came through because I was prepared, I was pushing, I was staying confident, and I was staying optimistic, and ultimately you end up winning. So, there's no, I don't have a perfect story that I can give you. I have many stories, but none of them would really resonate without seeing the full picture.
We have come to the last segment of the podcast, and this is something that I ask to all of my guests. Do you understand the meaning of your life?
Yes, I think I do. It's
What is
to
it then?
Yeah, it's to provide. It's honestly to serve. It's to be here to leave the place a better place than I left it, right? My job, though it may be a single person or hundreds of people, impact is left by making it a better place for someone else, right? The things that we do are improving lives. The things that I do are helping people do more in their life. Like, one of my proudest moments in the company is not when someone wins a big deal or like does something cool. That's always fun. But you know what I really love? When an employee tells me they bought that car that they really wanted or that house that they really wanted. That's a proud moment. And to me, that's servitude. And I believe in servant leadership, and I operate in a servant leadership opportunity, what method within the company. And I will tell you that that is what makes me proud, and that's what life is about. That's the moment that you feel good. Money doesn't make you feel good. It enables you to get to the place where it may help you feel good. But feeling good is an emotion that only comes in through the way that makes you happy. And to me, happiness comes around helping other people.
That's amazing. Helping other people, right? So, in that case, do you actually derive the definition of your life from the work that you do? Is
Yeah,
send lane the
I
definition
think
of your life?
I don't know if sendlane is a definition of my life. I think that it definitely engulfs me in a lot of things I do today. I would say that it's more just the going back to it. I think it's the people that I meet and the impact that I leave. Like that's who defines me, and the way that people talk about me behind my back. That's who defines me, right? If I know that I'm getting the right people talking about me in the positive manner, I know that I've left the positive mark. I believe in living with kindness, humbleness, no ego. I mean, I really don't live a life of the ego, and I think it's unnecessary. And I think that all humans deserve, obviously the same opportunities, but it's up to you as a human to get that opportunity, not the world to give you that opportunity. And those who chase that reward will be rewarded.
That's amazing. You've been really great throughout the podcast, Jimmy. Thanks for taking the time to do this. So, we've come to the end right now.
Cool.
So, yeah, are you investing in any kind of startups right now?
Yeah, I do some angel investments, some light seed rounds, but I think it's got to be really interesting and relevant for me lately. I think that I went and sprayed a little bit over the last couple of years, and I've had a couple exit, a couple do some interesting things. But if the startup is interesting, it's right. I don't know, maybe.
Sure. You could always email him. I can put your email down
Yeah,
below in the
it's
link.
jk@sendlane.com. It's not very hard to find me. So you can email me at jk. I'm very active on social media. On X, you can find me at EO Jimmy Kim, or you can look me up on LinkedIn at Jimmy Kim. I'm active on all channels. I do respond. As long as you're not cold pitching me with some spam, I will respond to you. If you send me some lead generation, I'm probably going to ignore you. But otherwise, I do respond to humans, and I believe in it. Responded to her when she emailed me, right? She emailed me cold. I said, sure, let's do it. Don't care who you are, because I believe that everybody deserves the opportunity. And I hope you can see that in today's conversation.
Yeah, that's really right. So cheers, Jimmy. It's been really great.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Good luck.